Morning, everybody. We have a full day and a full panel ahead of us, so we'll get started on time today. My name is Chad Raphael. I'm with the Environmental Justice and the Common Good Initiative. I teach here in the Communication Department as my day job. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going to happen today, and then we'll get into our first panel. This morning, we have the first panel, Training for Transformation. We're going to be hearing about examples of community-engaged research and learning for climate and environmental justice that are being done here at Santa Clara. Try to put together a panel that represents a broad range of disciplines. After that, we'll have a break and then another panel on community university networks for learning, research, and collective action across institutions. How can we help each other across institutions to do more of this kind of work that we've been focused on yesterday, today, and tomorrow? Well, that's followed by lunch. And if anybody wants to go to Turn's Good Market, we'll be happy to point you to how to get there. In the afternoon, we turn to the theme of strengthening partnerships. And so we have our keynote addresses from the Reverend Michael Garanzini, the president of the Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities, and then Veronica Eady, who's going to be giving a talk about how to advance environmental justice from within government. Veronica is with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. We'll have some previews of our afternoon sessions, and then we'll send you off to different rooms for an incredible array of workshops and training sessions. So we'll tell you more about that when the time comes. And then we'll come back here at 4:30 for a closing with a rousing ballet folklorico performance. So that's designed to get you back here so that we can have a closing. Anybody who wants to do a little dancing on their own after that can go to Turn's Barnless Barn Dance. Just a reminder that on Saturday, we have an invitation event for leaders in Jesuit education and social ministry on what we can do together moving forward. And then also the Youth Summit, the Youth-led Summit for youth, which will be here 10 to 3. Registration is still open for the Youth Summit. So if you want to go ahead and register for that, please do. Let's turn to the first panel. Transformational examples of community-engaged learning and research. Really want to thank the Miller Center for Social Entrepreneurship here at Santa Clara University, who graciously sponsored this session. And we have two representatives, Jen Merritt and Andy Lieberman, who will be presenting on their fellowship program. I won't do long introductions. I'll just give you a sense of who's going to speak and what they'll talk about. So the first presentation, CJ and David are here to present their work with Jamie Chang on assessing extreme heat vulnerability for the unhoused in San Jose. Molly King can't join us today, but Jocelyn Anaya Galvan, her student co-author, is going to take full ownership of their research and present on emergency preparedness intervention for people with mobility disabilities. Wan Jung Kim is here to present her work with Kathy Stower on research practice partnerships with beginning STEM teachers and their students. Ted Smith of the International Campaign for Responsible Technology, Iris Stewart-Fry, and I will present on addressing threats to electronics industry workers and communities. We are in Silicon Valley. We have a presentation from Jen and Andy on undergraduate action research with social enterprises for social justice. And then Ryan Anderson and Grace Urbanato are going to present on assessing climate change and residential displacement risks among low-income folks in coastal California. If you'd like to know more about how to do community-engaged research for environmental justice, there are two free resources that you can turn to. One is on our website, and that's a free guide that I wrote about 4 years ago on how to do engaged scholarship for environmental justice. You can download that. Turn that into a book with my co-editor and co-author, Martha Matsuoka. We raised the money to publish it open access. So make a note, January 2024, don't buy this book. It will be free on the UC Press website, and it's a major expansion of the guide that addresses how to do this kind of work in many, many disciplines. I want to turn to the first presentation, CJ, and give you the clicker. Pulling the mic up close to you so everybody's hearing the webinar, and it's all yours.
Great. Thanks so much, Chad, and thank you all for coming. I'm CJ Gabbe from SCU's Department of Environmental Studies and Sciences, and I'm here presenting with our terrific student researcher and co-author, David Seo. Dr. Jamie Chang couldn't be here, nor could Mariah Campson, but they were both co-authors on this research. And this research wouldn't have been possible without the funding of SCU's EJ research grant, so we really thank the initiative for that. So as many of you may or may not know, extreme heat is the greatest weather-related cause of death in the United States. In 2021, about 1,500 people estimated died from extreme heat, and up to half of those people were unhoused people. So we know there's a big issue here, particularly as we think about the climate warming, longer heat waves, warmer nights, warmer days, and also an increase in homelessness. So we know that there's this potential for worsening conditions in terms of heat vulnerability for people who are unhoused. But most of the literature has focused much more on disparities facing housed people. The literature has looked at thermal inequities, which mean inequities for people of color and people with low incomes who live in neighborhoods with fewer trees, higher land surface temperatures, more pavement. But there really hasn't been much focus on the experiences or exposure of people who are unhoused. So that's really the focus of our research. And as many of you know, we have a growing homeless population here in Santa Clara County. The last estimate was about 10,000 unhoused people in the county, of whom an estimated 77% were unsheltered. So unsheltered means that they were living in encampments or vehicles or other types of structures that weren't designed for human inhabitation. So the focus of our research really is in this unsheltered population in Santa Clara County. So we focus on a couple research questions here, and I'll talk about how some of it fits into our community-based approach. But we want to try to understand, what are the neighborhoods like where unsheltered, unhoused people are living in Santa Clara County? And particularly, what are some of the neighborhood characteristics that may affect their heat exposure and heat vulnerability? And then also just trying to understand, how do unsheltered people experience the heat? How do they adapt to it? And then what might be some feasible solutions given what we've learned? So we have a two-part approach here. The first part is focused on using some quantitative data to present descriptive statistics and do a spatial analysis of where unhoused people live, what are the characteristics of those neighborhoods, and what might be some focus areas to study. And then in the second part, we did 82 interviews with people who were formerly or mostly currently unhoused, who lived in these areas that were hotter, had fewer trees and more pavement, and tried to understand their lived experiences and understand how they cope and adapt to higher temperatures and summertime heat. And the semi-structured interviews here were done in conjunction with the terrific organization Downtown Streets Team San Jose. And it really wouldn't have been possible without them, because we were able to work with them to create the survey and also work with their staff and members. So as you can see in the map at left, the unsheltered homeless population in Santa Clara County is not evenly or randomly distributed across Santa Clara County. 2/3 of the unsheltered homeless in Santa Clara County live in San Jose, and there are particularly areas near in and near downtown San Jose, including along the Guadalupe River and Coyote Creek. And there are some pockets in some of the northern cities in the valley, including Palo Alto, Mountain View, and Sunnyvale. And then looking at some of the neighborhood characteristics, we get a sense for the nature of the neighborhoods where unsheltered folks are living. These are neighborhoods that are hotter, have less tree canopy, higher poverty rates, higher shares of renters, lower shares of white residents, and higher shares of Hispanic or Latino residents. So then we started to say, okay, where is kind of the nexus of heat and unsheltered populations? And we use two different measures. One is looking at land surface temperatures, and then one is looking at lack of tree canopy. So in the map at left, you can see that there are the areas in red are these clusters of heat and unsheltered folks. And the largest cluster is south of downtown San Jose, and it's kind of bisected by Coyote Creek and Monterey Road. And then in terms of lack of shade, a lot of overlap there, but there are also some areas near the San Jose airport in downtown San Jose and also south of downtown. And those were the areas that we focused on for our interviews. So I'm going to turn it over to David, and he's going to talk about what we learned, a few things that we learned from these 82 interviews. And we'll try to pull it all together and figure out what are some lessons to learn, what do we still need to know, and how did the community help us, and what we still, what this kind of will need for next steps.
Thank you, CJ. So the team and I interviewed 82 unhoused people to hear more about their stories and experiences regarding how heat played in their everyday lives. First, many participants expressed that they had a basic physical issues directly from the sun. These included like sunburns, dehydration, sometimes even fainting, and several of them already even told us that they already had ongoing physical conditions such as high blood pressure, cardiovascular diseases, and sometimes asthma. And these conditions were worsened as the temperatures got hotter and just the heat waves getting much longer. And so second, there was a problem with accessing water and shade. And when we interviewed at the encampment homes, we asked participants to tell us about a key factor they considered when selecting their encampment spots. And most of them replied that having access to basic needs such as water and shade were the most important factor. But these water and shade, they were at scarce, and they were really difficult to have access to, just because these unhoused participants did not want to leave their spots and did not want to leave their belongings, or sometimes not immobile just because they either had disabilities or broken vehicles. And because of this, stability was often viewed as a higher priority than shade. And to these participants, stability generally meant that they would be less likely to be encountered with police officers, neighbors, and just less likely to be swept by street sweeping and just forcibly removed. And these encampments really had no access of running water or bathrooms. And the Columbus Park's encampments, most of the participants carried around bottled water from the local volunteers. And lastly, there was a dilemma about utilizing cooling centers. And during our study period, the city of San Jose actually promoted around 5 different cooling centers near the community centers with extended hours. And when we asked about their experiences with these municipal cooling centers, generally they responded back with having that these locations were not conveniently located or not well advertised. And yeah, and these problems were derived basically due to having a lack of knowledge about where they get these kind of information in the first place, because most of the information they get were through words of mouth and not on the internet. And some of the participants also stressed about how some of them don't even really use these municipal cooling centers just because they had rules, and they just like to get by with having their own set of rules. And some of these rules or policies included like curfews, limited hours to stay, pets, limited storage for belongings, and intoxications.
Thanks, David. So a couple of the key findings pulling together these quantitative and qualitative results were, it seems like we're kind of stating the obvious, but unsheltered people do face thermal inequities, but it hasn't been well documented. So one of our contributions, at least to scholarship, is starting to document how and where this occurs. But in terms of our practical implications, we're helping to explain the story that unsheltered people suffer from heat, their health is harmed by heat, but they're also facing a lot of other competing issues, like David was talking about, in terms of finding places where they're able to find stability, build community, and not get forcibly removed by either encampment sweeps or by complaints from neighbors. So this kind of tension between access to basic services and perceived stability is really important. In terms of policy implications, housing is so important. I mean, so much of this heat exposure is because people are unhoused and have no way of escaping sun exposure, heat, summertime conditions. But in the absence of housing, since we know that there's still going to be a big gap in the near term, we need to think about how we can incorporate water, shade, other kinds of heat-related management into the types of interim or temporary solutions. And that's something that hasn't been happening according to the people we talked with. And it's also important that if cities and counties are going to have cooling centers, and a lot of them are trying to figure out why don't more people come to the cooling centers, that they design them with the needs of their users in mind. And so that would mean welcoming and inclusive, being conveniently located and providing transportation to the centers, and also thinking about what are the policies that will both ensure safety, but also get people in the door and potentially keep them away from the health harms of the heat wave. And lastly, I want to say we have a few lessons that I wanted to share in terms of what this means in terms of community-based research. I mean, we used a mixed methods approach, but I think the qualitative approach really would not have been possible without the relationships that Jamie Chang had from years of work with unhoused communities here in the South Bay and the Bay Area more broadly. And we tried to think of ways that our community partner, Downtown Streets team, could help inform our research, and we worked closely with them on the semi-structured interviews. They helped us design the questions in the survey, did test runs and that sort of thing. And I don't think the survey would have gotten what we really wanted to get at without their help. And also these community-based projects, hopefully David agrees, but are such a great chance for student researchers to learn and make a contribution, but also for the people, I think the people who they interview genuinely enjoyed talking with a student and sharing their experiences with a student. And that was meaningful and also perhaps more accessible to them than talking to, a professor, or, we did a lot of them in conjunction. I think I could tell the interviewees really enjoyed working with the students. So I think there's so much potential, time's up, but I think there's so much potential here for these kinds of community-based collaborations in the future. And we'd love to chat with you all about it in the future. Feel free to drop us an email, or I'll be around later too. Thanks.
Thank you so much, CJ and David, for modeling great faculty-student collaboration on research, for modeling excellent time management as well. Much appreciated. This room's going to fill up today, and we have many, many people who are watching on the webinar. This is also recorded, so the presentations are going to get out to a lot of people today, and I really think people are going to learn a lot from what all of you are saying. We're going to turn to Jocelyn next. So Jocelyn, if you got the clicker, you can go ahead and drive.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Anaya Galvan, and I'm a senior sociology and psychology student here at Santa Clara. I've been working on this project with Dr. Molly King, who unfortunately wasn't able to be here today because of illness. But today I'll be talking about working with our community partner and the work we did on emergency preparedness for people with mobility disabilities and climate disasters. So disability is widespread. 1 in 4 Americans have a disability. This makes up the largest US minority group, and it's a pretty sizable worldwide group as well. This makes it an important understudied population. People with disabilities are disproportionately impacted by natural disasters and yet also disproportionately underprepared for them. And emergency kits would provide a way to help them prepare, especially because emergency planners rarely adequately prepare for the needs of individuals with disabilities. Evacuation centers are also always not the most accessible or safe for people with disabilities. And a global study found that only 3 in 10 people with disabilities worldwide have a personal preparedness plan. Our community partner, United Spinal Association, is seeking to change this by providing resources for people with mobility disabilities. And they do this in the form of providing support groups, but also providing emergency preparedness kits and small grants for people with disabilities who have experienced a natural disaster. My research mentor, Dr. King, got involved with this organization by reaching out and asking them if they needed help researching their emergency kit intervention. So I also helped United Spinal by transcribing interviews, and I found that interviewees, and these were interviews of people who received grants from United Spinal. So they had lived through natural disasters. And these disasters ranged from hurricanes to ice storms. They were all over the country, but they all had similar tips when it came to emergency preparedness. And these tips went under the umbrella categories of situational preparedness, having a support group, and utilizing resources. To go more in depth about what we learned from these interviews, after transcribing them, I kind of narrowed them down to 10 and then to 5 for the sake of this presentation. But we found that supply preparation is key. It is crucial. This includes food, medicine, generators. It's also important to keep in mind the individual needs of people with disabilities. So if one, for example, has a power wheelchair, being prepared for a power outage by having a manual wheelchair on the side is super important. This also includes like getting more supplies than are necessary, since stores are always closed during disasters. The second tip that we got from these interviews were registering in county civic groups or emergency management offices. These are entities that help people with disabilities evacuate their home and help them seek housing and accessible housing at that. The third tip that we got was the importance of support groups and talking to experienced locals with mobility disabilities. This is especially important for younger people with disabilities or people who have just developed a spinal cord injury, for example. Having a support system, whether that's by joining an official support group or just connecting with locals who have disabilities and have lived in an area for a long time, is super educational and can be life-saving. And the fourth tip that we got was printing out essential documents. This is insurance policies, medication names and dosages, doctors' phone numbers. This saves a lot of time, a lot of stress, and oftentimes a lot of money. And the last tip that I'd like to talk about is communicating with medical supply companies. Many people with disabilities are displaced after a natural disaster hits their home and don't have access to their medical supplies. So this includes things like air pressure mattresses or catheters. And communicating with these supply companies allows the companies to send like large orders of these supplies. So what I did in this experience was I transcribed the interviews as well as conducted literature reviews. This allowed me to gain familiarity with a community I haven't had any experience with before. It educated me on the social and political context people with disabilities live in today. And I also met with our lead researcher, Dr. Molly King, often. I really enjoyed this as it had us develop a strong relationship that I felt comfortable asking questions, making sure I was on track with tasks. And I think as a student researcher, that's super important to feel comfortable enough to like speak with the lead researcher and talk about any areas where I'm having issues. And then I also enjoyed practicing like real research skills with a community partner that I wasn't familiar with before because the work I was doing felt important and needed. And familiarizing myself with the issues that people with most mobility disabilities faced was something that inspired like an intrinsic motivation within me. And once I saw the different support groups and resources that United Spinal provided, I was intrinsically motivated, and this went beyond like trying to develop myself professionally and just inspired me to do the work that I was doing and help Dr. Molly King. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to Dr. Molly King. And thank you so much for listening.
Jocelyn's presentation reminded me that a place like Santa Clara or Loyola Chicago or other Jesuit institutions, faculty research is often student research, and it's often undergraduate student research. And the fact that you could step in and so seamlessly and confidently present this work without Dr. Molly King being here today is, to me, evidence of how much this research has become your research. So I really, really admire and appreciate that. And I hope that everybody recognizes that Jocelyn's not a graduate student. She's not an assistant professor. She's stepping in as an undergraduate to present work that she and her faculty mentor have worked on together for several years now. So, yeah, let's just take note of that. Wanjung Kim is going to present the research she's been doing with Kathy Stower on co-creating the discourse of environmental consciousness toward justice in classrooms. This is also another wonderful project that the Environmental Justice and Common Good Initiative has been able to fund through our small grants program.
Hello. Thanks for coming this early morning session. I'm Wanjung Kim, and I am also on behalf of my colleague, Dr. Kathy Stower. So we are presenting our project, co-creating the discourse of environmental consciousness towards justice in classrooms. This is also the research and practice partnership with beginning STEM teachers and their students. And so our question as teacher educators, and particularly in the context of our teacher education program at SCU, is what would it look like to center and orient STEM classrooms toward justice? And so we sought to design, implement, and reflect on environmental consciousness toward justice, shortly ECJ STEM units with beginning teachers at SCU's MATSE program. So these are teachers and rappers. They have to teach during day and they join their master's program at night. So we have been working with these amazing teachers throughout our project. So we are asking 3 questions, and we consider these questions aligning with the designing and implementing and reflecting on the development of ECJ unit is really important, because teacher education program, despite the importance of environmental justice argued, it is really known to be lacking in the inter-program consensus on how to support our teachers to address and center the environmental issues and climate justice issues in STEM subjects, because the teachers are under pressure of the state credentialing requirements and standards, so subject standards-based instructions. So how can we support these teachers actually enact their commitment toward environmental justice and sustainability? So our project will have different parts and steps. So first is course design and redesign. And I participated in curriculum design development workshop offered from our university, like Laudato Si across curriculum and sustainability across curriculum. And I also am doing science methods courses and a summer workshop and in-class implementation and dissemination. And in the method courses, teachers will develop their ECJ unit individually. And there are 76 teachers who developed their units and participated in this project. And among those, some teachers further participated in refine, revise, and reflect on their units in their own classroom practice. And I partnered with them across 2 years. So last year, 6 teachers, and this year, another 6 teachers will join the summer workshop and in-class implementation and continued reflection sessions. And in this partnership, we center the students' engagement in the research projects in and with their own local community. And the dissemination, I was able to present, and I will be doing so, the work in the conferences, and also I honorably presented with our partner teacher, and also there will be 3 more manuscripts will be in progress. But this is not the end. This will be the cycle, and the next cycle will help me revise and again redesign the course so that I can further support my teachers. So lesson learned and ongoing outcomes. From method courses design and implementation, what I learned is it is really important to critically identify and reflect on the ambiguity in the content we as teacher educators would teach in our courses. We may be just satisfied with, yes, this might have been enough, but according to my engagement with my partners, it is still very ambiguous. And also the teachers required and wanted their teacher educators to model the practice and outcomes and offer more explicit examples of how they can do. So they have their agency and they have their desire and hope what they can do, but they want to see the model and examples. And what I learned is collaborating with the university sources was really beneficial and powerful. So the teachers were able to feel the sense of belonging. So over there, Veronica Johnson is over there, and I have been collaborating with SCU, Center for Sustainability, and also Sorata Campus of Diversity and Inclusion Maker Lab. So I have been working with the university sources and university insights and experts to support the teachers to have not only the sense of belonging with the university, and also so they can imagine what I can do in my context. So that collaboration is something I want to recommend. And as you will see, although in my first year, yes, I was able to integrate an ECJ unit component, but this year, based on the first round of reflection and noticing of the ambiguity, I was able to incorporate the ECJ discourse across the curriculum and across the weeks. And this is also showing how I modeled the instructions, and also I supported teachers to enhance their environmental and climate justice literacy. And through the workshop and in-class implementation, what I learned is, again, teaching in method courses is not enough. And if teachers are willing to volunteer, continued partnership should take place. And also, it is really important to be with our teachers in the moments with in physically and reflectively, and about the moments unexpected, uncertain, and puzzling moments of enacting ECJ units. I will introduce a little bit later. So these are 6 amazing teachers I have been partnering with. So these teachers are teaching in Alum Lock Elementary School District and San Jose High School Union Districts. So these teachers, if I could put them out this morning, I would have been doing so. Then they have to teach this morning. So I'm shouting out my thanks a lot to these teachers. So what I want to share as the lessons learned is the moments of disruption and moments of transformation with the beginning teachers and their students. So while I am introducing these moments, I hope you think about if you were the teacher educator, and the parents of the students, and the classmates of the students who are making these statements, how you would respond to this, and how you would support and amplify their voices. So the first set of moments are the moments of disruption or moments of challenges. So teachers, although they have the full respect about their students' voices and statements, they also wanted to complicate their students' ideas in a respectful, caring way. So these are the examples. During a global warming unit, first of all, I'm sorry, this is really small text, sorry. So during a global warming unit, the second grader stated in a really proud voice, I don't have children. Global warming is due to the increase of population. Our bodies emit heat, yes, a scientific fact. The more people, the higher temperature. This is where we should support the students to complicate their ideas. And not having children can help reduce the population and reduce body heat emission. How will you support this teacher who encountered this moment? And the second moment of challenge or disruption was coming from 7th grader during a renewable energy unit. The student was saying, my dad said, nuclear energy is an only solution. Other renewable energy sources are flawed and cost more. So the student brought his beloved dad's idea. And how can we support this student to complicate and expand the student idea in a respectful and caring way? And the next set of moments are the moments of transformation, from which we were able to expand our research project with the students in an unexpected, even more radical and amazing way. The first student from was a 6th grader during a why CO2 is a greenhouse gas. And the student was asking, if CO2 is so concerned, why not just capturing them? Is it something not yet invented? Oh, I think I want to do it. So we were able to look into and Google search online, and we were able to see there are ongoing work about a CO2 capturing machine, and we imagined the design, what kind of CO2 capturing machine should be or not when considering the environmental justice. And the second question was, you said that, so here you as the student teacher, you said that plastic waste, this 3rd grader during a plastic planet unit, you said that plastic wastes are not going away. Then where are they? If they are picked up from my house, so where is it? And how can I go there? So the student really want to go, instead of just talking and you saying that we should recycle, so where is it? So this led the teacher to bring some of the students to the place where the abandoned or the place in and the waste is stored. So this kind of action was beyond our expectations. Students wanted to see and do something, and this is really important learning for us. And this kind of learning was not just from students, but from the teachers. And my being in there was, I hope, helpful for my teachers, because teachers also had a lot of questions. Some teachers just rushed to me during their implementation, during their class time. And they just pause and approach to me to ask, like, how's the heat and temperature difference? And is electricity energy or resource? Oh, my students understood the community just as a group of people not relating to theirs. And is plastic matter or object? And these are questions, something that you can easily imagine. Many of the teachers with whom I work were elementary teachers who may need to bring more literacy regarding this science and also science justice related literacy. So it was where I found why this work is so important, the continued partnership. And the second thing is the reflection. I learned from the teachers, like 9th grader teacher said that I brought my assumption of what is environment and justice, not asking my students' understanding of it. And then this kind of learning helped me refine my work and also further facilitate the support for my teachers. So again, I want to appreciate this co-learning opportunity and also the framework we have established, utilized, which was the environmental consciousness toward the justice framework. And also there are still remaining questions, like what if the teachers are not committed? Still, if we want to support the teachers, the ECJ unit, how can you support them? And second, because of the structure of this project, teachers and teacher educators brought their ideas into the design. But how students can participate in that design process at the first round and from the very beginning. So thank you so much for listening.
I hope people will come up and approach Fawn afterwards if you have any questions. Yeah. I just want to say thank you so much, particularly for those closing reflections, because they often come up for me when I teach my colleagues in courses or workshops for them on how to teach sustainability and environmental justice across the curriculum, in which I'm also learn a great deal from the participants in those workshops. So thank you.
As you can see from the screen, we will have the research project presentation in Guadalupe Hall across the street. One of our partner teachers will bring her amazing sixth grader students from Sacred Navy School. So if your time allows, please join.
Thank you so much. We'll go through that. That's okay. Oops. Okay, I'm going to set my alarm so that, because I have to keep time while also trying to talk at the same time and chew gum. So, but Ted, why don't you, Ted Smith is going to get us started, but let me make sure I set my time to 9:40. This next presentation is going to be, Ted Smith is going to lead us off on addressing threats to electronics industry workers and communities. I'm going to have Ted put us right into it, and then I'll come in and tell you a little bit more about Ted, some things you ought to know, and then some work that my students have done with him, and then Iris will talk about some of the work that her students have done with Ted. So can you pass the clicker down this way? So that, oh, you got it, great. All yours, Ted.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me to this conference. I've worked quite a bit over the last several years with both Chad and Iris and with the students in their classes to help do research for our campaigns. I've been working in this arena since the 1970s as the electronics industry grew up here in Silicon Valley and has, as we know, changed the world in so many different ways. What's less known is that it has also brought with it a series of environmental justice challenges, particularly to the workers who make the products, as well as to the communities who live near some of the production plants. The industry, which used to call itself the clean industry, in fact, uses thousands of hazardous chemicals in its production and pose challenges throughout the life cycle. And we're suggesting that we need a new Moore's Law for sustainability. And as you know, Moore's Law predicted many, many years ago that each new generation of technology would bring about products that are both 100% faster, cheaper, and more powerful than each previous generation. And that's proven true now over many decades. We want to focus on the people who bring us the electronic gadgets that we all use, the people who do the mining, the people who do the production work, as well as the people who work on e-waste at the end of life, because as we know, these are all very short life cycle products. We've worked with some academics and other NGOs to try to identify what are really the most hazardous chemicals used in this industry. And there's no official list that's published. A lot of this is proprietary information, so you have to really try to dig it out. And students have been incredibly helpful in trying to help us do that. But we came up with an analysis that of the 81 most commonly used chemicals in electronics manufacturing, that 30 of them were recognized as carcinogens and that they cause cancer. 40 are recognized as mutagens, and 45 are recognized as reproductive toxins, which is a real serious problem in this industry because globally, the vast majority of the workers who make the products are women of childbearing age. Another issue that we've really spent a lot of time looking at is the energy and water use of this industry. And we know that an individual fabrication facility, a chip plant, can use tens of millions of gallons of water a day, which is the equivalent of household water consumption of a city of over 120,000 people. So just massive uses of water. And a lot of these new plants are going into Arizona, which is, as you know, has no water to spare at all. And each chip making machine is rated to consume about 1 megawatt of electricity, about 10 times more than previous generations, so that the newer technologies are even more of a challenge to sustainability. And one EUV lithography machine, which are the most advanced machines in the world, requires about 30,000 kilowatt hours of electricity a day and consumes about 10 million kilowatt hours over a year. And TSMC, which is the premier chip making company in the world now based in Taiwan, their actual power consumption in 2021 is close to 17 billion kilowatt hours. So these numbers are just staggering. And the industry, as you probably know, is still continuing to grow significantly. So we're trying to promote this new strategy of saying that we need a Moore's Law for sustainability. And this was actually a vision statement that I was part of developing, now over 24 years ago, saying each new generation of technical improvements in electronic products should include parallel and proportional improvements in environmental, health, and safety, as well as social attributes. And I think that's the job that I feel that we all need to take on as we are trying to bring about a more sustainable world, that we need to have this vision as we continue to try to have some impact on the industry. And as you probably know, we're undergoing a major transformation right now in this country due to some legislation that was passed last year, the CHIPS and Science Act, which provides a historic opportunity for the National Institute for Standards and Technology to exercise its authority to promote a new Moore's Law for sustainability by setting high manufacturing standards for companies that are doing business now in the U.S. and will be doing business in the U.S. And that can set a new standard if the government takes on this challenge seriously and provides guidelines for if companies are going to be accepting the billions of dollars of subsidy that they commit to meeting the highest global standards for clean production. So what we want is health and safety of semiconductor workers, their families, and surrounding communities be protected from the harms of this industry, as we've experienced here in Silicon Valley over the last several decades. And state-of-the-art health and safety training should mirror state-of-the-art production technology, especially for women of childbearing age, so that they can be safe from reproductive and developmental toxins. So what can students do to help? This is what I've been really happy to work with faculty here and the students at the university to document some of these ongoing impacts, to research the hazards of the newer technologies, to map the industry expansion and identify community resources. This is something that you're going to be hearing more about today. Using social media for communication to affected sites. We've worked with students who have helped us develop much more sophisticated social media activities than we've been able to do ourselves, and using communication skills to support groups in their struggles. Again, when I've come in to teach classes, sometimes Chad in particular will have the students break down into small groups and with a challenge to say, how can we help develop a communications platform that will help further this activity? And they've been very helpful in doing that. And then help prepare fact sheets to alert workers and residents. So these are all things that undergraduate students have been continue to be helpful in, and one of the reasons why we really enjoy working with the students here at Santa Clara. Thank you.
And I just want to underscore that Ted is as much a member of the SCU community as anybody in this room. He has been a frequent lecturer here in undergraduate and law school classes. So is his wife, Mandy Hawes. He's helped co-organize events here. He's the parent of Kyle Smith, who was the starting right wing on the 1999 NCAA men's soccer team, which was the last team to go to the finals. I put that up there from Wikipedia, so you know it's true. And he's a soon-to-be grandparent of I hear, an excellent women's soccer player who's going to be joining the women's soccer team. And you will often see him at soccer games at the stadium. But you know, the main reason why Ted's as much a member of this community as anybody else, because the fact that we're the Jesuit University in Silicon Valley means that we have a role in being the conscience of the tech industry, not simply training the next generation of young people to fit into the industry as it is, and certainly not to be a cheerleader for any kind of innovation that gets developed, no matter whose lives it disrupts or cuts short. Iris and I are going to talk very briefly about some of the community-engaged research and learning we've done. What I've learned from Ted is that community-engaged research and community-based learning are relationships. And so I've been fortunate to work with Ted on the board as a board member of the organization he founded here, Silicon Valley Toxics, to advise the Electronics Take Back Coalition, which pushed to get cities and states to adopt laws requiring companies to take back their products or take financial responsibility for them here in the United States. And now with the ICRT, which Ted leads. And what I've learned is the best way to create learning opportunities for our students is to befriend organizations and to stay friends with them over time. It's funny that in the literature on community engaged research and how to do it, you often almost never see the word friendship. We talk about mutual benefit and have community partners, co-designing the research agenda and all that sort of stuff. That's really important. But the thing I'm most grateful for after 24 years of working with you, Ted, is your friendship. That's more meaningful to me than anything else. So I encourage people to think about how can you find an organization and people and befriend them, stay friends with them over time. A few things my environmental communications students have done with TED over the years. We started producing and testing campaign materials back around in the late 90s and early 2000s. They've done focus groups and surveys as part of class projects to get feedback on framing and messaging of campaign materials, particularly those aimed at college students, faculty, and university computer purchasers. And that informed some outreach to procurement officers here at Santa Clara and also at many other Bay Area institutions, universities. We held some workshops at SCU in 2004 with a bunch of those purchasing officers, and that helped them to adopt a number of environmentally preferable purchasing standards so that when they go to buy their computers, they're thinking about, will the companies take this step back and recycle it responsibly? So that raises the question for me, how can this work that we do help make our campuses more environmentally just? And then finally, often when TED comes to speak in my class, people come up afterwards and say, can I intern for you? And so finding interns who have helped create the ICRT website and doing the kind of informal brainstorming and crowdsourcing of research in class is something that any of us can do in a single class. It doesn't take a huge project. So what that raises for me is the question of every time we invite a speaker to speak in our classes, what can we give back to them? I'm going to skip ahead, but I've also had an opportunity to publish with TED in ways that remind me that community engaged research can be an opportunity for both of us to step back, reflect on the work that TED's done, synthesize it, and strategize together about next steps. We've done that as well. Iris.
How much time do we have left?
You should take the time you need, but 2-3 minutes.
Okay, great. I've also been very privileged to have a transformational educational opportunity for our students, working with TED on a product that has actually lasted and it's still being used. I think you were talking about it at the conference lately. So to give a broader context, one of the ways that we provide transformational opportunities for our students in several departments, including environmental studies and sciences, where I'm a part of, is through team capstone projects. And actually several of our former or current capstone instructors are in the room. So CJ and Chris and Leslie have all been part of that crew. And what we're doing is building these relationships and including friendships, what Chad was talking about, with organizations, and really building a bridge for students to take that, the technical expertise, the disciplinary expertise into the broader world, out there for the common good, and basically manifests the Jesuit values that we hope to instill in our students. So in our department, we have about 50 seniors every year that are working in groups of 3 to 5 with community groups. And in 2018, we were privileged to work with TED and actually 2 students groups under my mentorship. And we created these, the students did research as Ted was talking about on the supply chains for Dell and Apple, and how those were, how these are distributed worldwide. And they created these interactive maps and to support the advocacy and justice work that TED and his organization is doing. And this, so this kind of expertise, the clustering, the spatial representation really highlights the inequities, where these supply chains are coming from, where these wastes are going. We really ran into the same kind of issues that we've run into, that all of us, I think, are familiar with in environmental justice work, that the data that, what communities are telling us, right? What they're telling us about what they're experiencing, trying to find this data from the industries and organizations that are creating these issues is really, really difficult and posing a real barrier to be doing this. But so these interactive maps are still up there, although in the meantime, there's been a whole electronic revolution in terms of science, like citizen-based interactive mapping, and there are organizations that are doing a lot more, continuous update of that work, right? And as part of what our students are doing for their capstone work is then also prepare a report, prepare materials, so that this could be those flyers that Ted was talking about, and also posters. As you saw at our poster session last night, several of the posters actually were generated in collaboration with community organizations and our student groups. And the students, I think, have a real transformational experience often, like what Chad was saying. Can I intern for you? Or can I find my first job out there after graduation? Can I find my passion? Can I find my vocation in clean water or in, sustainable energy, by already having had this experience working in a team, working with a group out there that is actually creating change, especially in environmental justice. So if you would like to check these out for yourself and then also think about, maybe potential in the courses that you teach or the collaborations that you have, please feel free to click on those links. So.
Next up, we have Jen Merritt and Andy Lieberman from the Miller Center. If you can pass that down.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out where it needs to go.
Great, thanks so much. So Miller Center for Social.
And Andy, you can pull that mic right up to your face so people can really hear you. That'd be great.
So Miller Center for Social Entrepreneurship is a center of distinction here at the Santa Clara University, created by Father Paul Locatelli in 1997, specifically with the goal to be an interdisciplinary bridge for the Jesuit heritage of service to the poor and care for our common home with the Silicon Valley ethos of innovation and entrepreneurship. So the way we do that is working with three groups of stakeholders. Our kind of core relationships, our core partners are a network of now over 1,300 social enterprises around the world, mostly in the global South. 36% of these companies are working in some aspect of climate resilience. So these social enterprises have proven social impact. They're trying to scale and reach more people. We work with them through acceleration programs that help them get their business models and the investment they need to grow their impact. We do that with another group of stakeholders of 300 plus mentors. These executive mentors are business people. Many of them have a connection to Santa Clara University. They're alumni, their parents, their faculty. Others just are not directly connected with the university, but see our programs as a way to give back and help these social entrepreneurs. So the mentors help the entrepreneurs through our programming to develop their business plans. And the third group of stakeholders, the students, I'll let my colleague Jen talk about how we engage them in a moment. But first, just to wrap up my part, a couple of quick examples of the types of social enterprises we work with. Nasaba Water Filters, based in Indonesia, when they came to us in 2011, they had already reached about 17,000 people with a low-cost, very safe water filter that lets people have clean drinking water without having to boil the water, because boiling has a few disadvantages. One, it's expensive. You have to buy the firewood or spend your time gathering it. And then, of course, there's the environmental impact of that. So thanks to their work, they're finding a business model, raising some investment. They've now been able to grow their impact to reaching over 500,000 people, so 10 years later. And we've had students involved in some of the projects that have helped them scale up. Last example would be a Pollinate Group in India and Nepal. This organization has a network of 900 women entrepreneurs, micro-entrepreneurs in marginalized communities throughout those two countries. And what the women are doing is, through the help of Pollinate, is starting small businesses to sell low-cost solar lanterns, low-cost clean cook stoves, again, to community members. So from community members to other community members, these are life-changing products that help the quality of life, because if you don't have a low-cost solar light and you don't have electricity in your house, you're burning a kerosene lamp or candles. So again, it's expensive for the people and bad for their health and the environment. So this network of 900 entrepreneurs has grown over time. When Pollinate Group first came to us in 2015, they had already reached 46,000 people. So again, a non-trivial number. They have now, 8 years later, been able to reach over 700,000 people in those two, in India and Nepal. So to talk about how students are engaged in that work, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jen.
Thank you, Andy. Hi, I'm Jen Merritt-Faria. Nice to see you all here today. I'm the Senior Director for Academics at Miller Center, and I joined Miller Center about a year ago because I was attracted to the ways in which Miller Center animates the Santa Clara University vision, which is to make the world a more just, humane, and sustainable place. So by partnering Santa Clara University students and faculty with our global network of social impact innovators, Miller Center advances climate justice and women's economic empowerment, as Andy said, while also helping students like Judith here, who we'll speak to in a moment, to chart their path to global citizenship. And I just want to harken back to something that Chad said a few minutes ago. I really like this picture because it's a photo of Miller Center at our in-residence program last year with a number of our social enterprise partners from climate smart agriculture and clean water. And I think what Chad said is so true. The friendships have to be real, and the friendships that continue year after year after year allow more and more wonderful work to be done in collaboration with one another. But speaking of how we do this with how we do this work, making connections for students and faculty through our academic team, we do it in 3 primary ways. One is that we support 30 courses taught by Miller Center faculty scholars. They're from the Levy School, School of Engineering, and the College of Arts and Sciences. We also support 60 student internships every year, funded and organized by Miller Center. And these internships give students the chance to work in areas related to their academic expertise, such as financial modeling, data analytics, impact measurement, graphic design, copywriting, and more. And then finally, we offer kind of a signature program called the Miller Center Lewis Family Fellowship, which will be the focus of our remarks today. This is an interdisciplinary project. It involves a teaching team. Many of the people are in the room here today. Raise your hand if you're connected to Miller Center. Many of you. Yes, thank you so much for all the work that you do with us. The interdisciplinary teaching team is from sociology, environmental sciences and studies, engineering, English, grad school of education, the LEAD program, and Miller Center itself. And together, all these programs allow over 600, I think this year it's actually going to be closer to 700 to 800 students to really interact with our entrepreneurs around the world and learn something about social entrepreneurship. The fellowship is something that is offered to juniors of all majors. And through this fellowship, students can conduct action research with a mission on location with the social enterprises in different parts of the world. So students apply, they're given a stipend plus travel expenses. They take a 2-unit course. The course is offered in the spring and then again in fall. And in the summer, they travel to different locations around the world to do action research with a mission in partnership with these enterprises. And then they create deliverables and come back and reflect on what this has to do with kind of their own sort of sense of life's purpose. The entrepreneurs that they work with are in climate smart agriculture, renewable energy, and clean water. And then also they're entrepreneurs, as Andy said, that are focused on women's economic empowerment. But there's a significant overlap between those two groups because many of the women are women who are smallholder farmers or artisans working with sustainable materials and using designs that relate to their cultural heritage. So the Miller Center Fellowship has a lot of pieces to the curriculum, and we don't have time to go over it all in too much detail today, but essentially, students are learning social science research methods. That's what they're doing when they're in the field. They're also learning business models for social entrepreneurship. It's also a social justice component to the curriculum, and it fulfills the experiential learning for social justice core requirement. And then students are also learning about cultural humility and vocational discernment. And when we surveyed students this year from the last 10 years of the program, 97% of them said that it was a transformational experience. One student, Lindsay Allen, said, "My Miller Center Fellowship changed my life. It redefined the way I approach problem solving and taught me the importance of self-awareness, putting me on a path to be a leader for the social change I want to see." Following that, I want to introduce you to Judith Lee, another social innovation leader in our ecosystem.
Thank you, Jen. So, okay. Hi everyone, I'm Judith, and I want to start off with a question. So how many hours do you spend fetching and treating water per day? Probably not, right? So in our placement, Rwanda and Uganda, women and children spend 2 hours a day fetching 100 liters of water. And so we took some photos, for example, so our photos were taken by field surveyors because we couldn't be there last summer. So we cooperated with University of Rwanda and Heifer International. So our field surveyors are also college students. They help us deploy the survey and take some field photos for us. So in the field photos, we saw that first, most fetchers are women and children. And second, we saw that there's this giant, okay, it's not giant, but the container for water is called jerry can, and each jerry can is 20 liters of water. And most of jerry cans we use are dirty, and also like it's definitely not clean. And third, we also saw their water sources. Most of their water sources are rivers and lakes. Many of them also use boreholes and wells. But because of climate change, their water supply is becoming more and more unstable. So our project is to help our social enterprise partner, Celagio, to advance their social mission of delivering solar-powered water filtration device in East Africa. So we had some fundings, and at the end of the project, we have two deliverables for Celagios to advance their mission. The first one is a business model with recommendations. So we help them to improve their business model and compare their cost structure and tell them the profitability and their application of such business models. And second, we also provide them with a franchisee questionnaire and criteria to help them select reliable franchisees in the local market. And for me, this experience is transformative. And in the vocational discernment led by Jen and Stephen, I found my root reason for my love for social sciences. Is it okay? Yeah. Okay, I'm kind of out of my time. So I major in economics and sociology, and I also double minor in environmental studies and sustainability, and all of them are social sciences. And through this process, I found that my love for social sciences comes from my curiosity of human interactions, my exploration of like social phenomena, and my motivation to make human society a more inclusive and more sustainable world. and the fellowship fulfilled all of them. So during this whole process, I found what I'm good at, what I love, and what I care about. So it's, for me, going to graduate school and going directly to a PhD program is a natural choice. And I think the uniqueness of Miller Center Fellowship is it's built upon the spirit of compassion in the business domain, which is very rare in the business world. And for me, Miller Center Fellowship and all the mentors I met, they build or they grow a seed in my mind that everyone can become change agent. So we can make an impact in the world. Small, but real. And I believe that that hope is the most powerful tool I would always keep in my life trajectory.
Thank you so much, all three of you. I think it's a reminder that we're going to need a lot of social change strategies to tackle the climate and environmental justice crises that we face: community organizing, advocacy, community development, government service, and social entrepreneurship, just to name a few. Ryan.
Right, I think we're a little tight on time, so I'll give you a little bit.
It's okay, Ryan. Just want to let you know you have your full 12 if you need them.
Okay, I teach at 10:30 too, so tight on time. So I'm Ryan Anderson. I'm in anthropology. We're looking at, this is a project about looking at assessing climate change and residential displacement among lower income communities and households in coastal California. I'm working with CJ on this. Also Veronica Miranda in anthropology. And we have two student researchers working with us, Grace Urbinato and Lucy Schmidt. Oops, I went the wrong way. This way. Yay, so Santa Cruz, we know it, it's over the hill. What we're looking at specifically is the lower San Lorenzo watershed. You can see it here pretty well. We're looking at those three tracks kind of at the lower watershed that includes the beach flats, lower ocean, downtown, and that kind of upper River Street section. And if you see this, this is a flood hazard map, which is not only showing in the blue the coastal flooding, which a lot of times gets a lot of the attention. It's not only that, it's also what happens with these watersheds. If you know this area, the beach flats, and you know the boardwalk, about 100 years ago, all the parking lot and beach flat areas, that's all wetlands, right? And what happens when water levels rise? We're going to see it right there, just like we're seeing all along the Bay Area here. So our research questions are about what housing types, tenures, and vintages are disproportionately located in these areas. And we're also looking at, our second question is about risk perception. How does flood risk affect households' decisions about staying and adapting or about moving? And for this talk, I'm gonna focus more on question number 2. We have a mixed method approach happening here, thanks to CJ and thanks to Dr. Miranda in anthropology and our student researchers. So we're using spatial analysis, we're using content analysis of plans, we're doing some social media analysis of some of the recent storms, which I'll talk about in a second. We're also doing interviews with residents and city officials, participant observation, and we're going to be doing a survey. So those of you that are familiar with the Bay Area, in terms of economics and housing, the situation is not great. Let me get this right, it's on the left side for you all. So if you look at that housing affordability index on the left, that is not a good sign there. In terms of affordability, we're at a decades and decades long low. We're at a really low point when it comes to housing affordability. Again, those of you that live in the Bay Area, the chart on the right will not be shocking to see just the astronomical values of homes. So we have economic pressure, right? Combined with, patterned environmental pressure. This is an image of flooding in the San Lorenzo Park from 2017, right? So we have these combined. And this impacts where people live. It also impacts where people can go And not everybody has the ability and the resources to go to different places. So if you look at these 4 different graphs, we're looking at our study area, a high percentage of renters, relatively low rent there, but where else are they going to go? That's the upper right one. And the lower left is the percentage of renters in unaffordable housing, especially that kind of lower left quadrant of our study area. All of them, though, are at high displacement risks, including because of so many people coming out here, especially during the pandemic, we saw a real crunch with that of people getting pushed out as home values keep going up. So when CJ and Veronica and I started this project, you know, after the past few years of fires and the pandemic and like issues with heat, and people are moving because of all this stuff, right? So what we're thinking about is risk perception and like what's going to be the main issues that people are talking about here. We were thinking, you know, fires, pandemic, the heat. Well, things happen. And in the middle of kind of building this project, those the end of the year and beginning of the year, those big winter storms that hit all the atmospheric rivers and all that, they hit. This is a photograph I took right after the first of the year down in Capitola. This is or in Aptos actually, this is that pier with the concrete ship where the front end of it got ripped off and it got quite a bit of media attention. So, oops, okay, sorry, tech problems. There we go. So obviously, and you could see this in conversations with people and some of the groundwork that we're doing, but also on social media and media coverage. People are talking about rain, they're talking about erosion, they're talking about floods. None of this is new, but it's interesting how hazards and risk work, that it can be cyclical, but it can also sort of, you know, get a little bit buried. And big events like this can like bring it back to the forefront. So one of the challenges of doing research while teaching a lot, but also working with student researchers, it's like logistics, right? So how do we get started? And one way we thought was, well, all right, we want to start getting a sense of risk perception. Let's look at how this storm, this 2022-2023 January storm, December-January storm, how did it look through social media? Right. So what we did, this is a good way to get sort of students looking at some of the conversations that are happening. How are people talking about storms and flood risks? So we focused on Twitter, and we did a kind of a focused search between December 26th and January 17th. What this is, and you can see it in that chart. If you're looking at on the left side, we're looking at search terms of Santa Cruz and storm, and you can see it. And if you remember this hitting, there's this coverage of it coming in. And then around the 3rd and the 4th, it starts to really hit and the coverage really starts to peak. That second sort of bump in there is after the primary coverage. It's sort of like talking about cleaning up and what people are going to do after that first sort of wave. So we looked at 712 total posts. And one thing we're looking at here is this ebb and flow of coverage. Right at the end of that, on the 17th, Joe Biden, the rumors of President Biden coming into town hit on the 18th. And once again, this starts to spike again, right? So conversations ebb and flow. All right. And what we're looking at was in these 712 posts, like what's coming up here? And the dominant themes are mostly about damage, right? The amount of damage. They're about the amount of rainfall. They're about floods and they're about water levels. As an anthropologist and also a political ecologist, something that stood out was that there's very little mention of sort of the political economy of any of it, right? So we're doing search terms and you can see it on the right side: wealth, poverty, renter, marginalized, low income. We looked at a couple of different communities, homelessness, like very little coming up. It's mostly talking about the storm itself, the hazard. We also wanted to kind of check and see what we're getting. So we sampled 10 accounts, some local news accounts, and also some kind of prominent local users. Like one user was native Santa Cruz that posted a whole bunch of stuff during this time. So we sampled these 10, 347 posts, similar kind of pattern. Not much talking about at-risk populations, about any kind of unevenness. It's mostly about the size of the storm, right? How much water, how many floods, where it's being flooded. So thinking through risk perception, which is what me, our research team, and our students are going to be doing in the next steps. Social media is its start, right? It reflects what people are thinking. It also impacts how people think about stuff. But, you know, Twitter is not real life. It's only like a reflection. It's a very partial reflection. It depends on who's on those platforms. So one of the next things we're going to be looking at is how do these kind of social media discourses and patterns, how do they compare with the residents and city officials that we're working with, what they think. So the next step here is interviews, the survey, and participant observation. There we go. So to kind of wrap it up here, I'm coming from a perspective in like environmental anthropology and political ecology. And honestly, a lot of these kind of results that we have from social media are not shocking. You can go back to Hurricane Katrina, all kinds of large environmental events. There does tend to be a focus on the hazard itself, how big it is, how much power it has, and then that shapes our responses, right? Bigger walls, whatever, levees, all this sort of stuff. Political ecology, one of the kind of starting points that I build from, is there's a limitation to focusing on just the storm. We have to look at uneven risk. We have to look at power. We have to look at resource disparities. And then within that, we have to understand how and why residents understand these risks and make decisions. And what we're seeing so far in some of the kind of our early, we'll look at planning documents and others, is a lot of it is an information issue. Like how much information and how like specific of information do you have about the flood risks that you actually have? There's also limitations on how much you can know about like sea level rise risks. And there's been some push among the real estate industry and others to like disclose that. It's an information problem. And so going forward, I'm coming from my research background is in anthropology, kind of long-term work on the coast, including Baja California and Mexico. And so I have these established relations with officials in the city of Santa Cruz that we're going to be drawing from, along with the longer term work I've done along the coast here. And my team overall, the team that I'm working with, has extensive community-based and ethnographic experience. So the next step here is really the real work. The real work is time on the ground. It's building those relationships. And I think in terms of lessons learned, I think one of the real benefits of working with students is teaching them we can't just helicopter in. We can't just pick a site we want and do whatever we want. We got to go there, meet people, build relations, and most importantly, listen to what they have to say and go from there.